it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do a bit of a different video for you guys. I'm going to be doing a series on my Copic favorites. And before I go into my favorite color combinations for different things, I'm actually going to be doing a series of different videos, dividing it into categories like critters and people and nature. But before I get to those videos, I wanted to just talk today about the different tools that you're going to need if you want to get into Copic coloring. There's not a whole lot, but there are a few, and so I just wanted to go over that basic information first in today's video. So the first thing you're going to need are the markers themselves, and they come in a couple of different styles. When I first started out, I went with the Chow markers. I bought a dozen of these. These are the only 4 that I still have from those original markers, because over time I did decide to go with the sketch markers that you see below that have the oval barrel and hold more ink. But so one thing that I also did wrong when I got my markers is that I bought a variety of colors and they didn't necessarily go together. I did get these 2 purples, but they were too far apart on the spectrum to really be able to blend well. So that's not something that you want to do. You don't want to just go out and buy a bunch of different colors, because Copics are made to blend. So what you want to do is purchase markers in sets of 3 if you can, a light, a medium, and a dark. And the easiest way to do this is just to go in the color family that Copic has set up. Now you can combine other colors. We'll get to that later on in future videos, but the easiest way is just to follow the simple numbering system. And that way you can ensure that you're going to get markers that are going to blend well. So the first that I had was R22, R24, and R29. Now here you have Y13, Y15, Y17. These each have a dark, a medium, and a light. So you know that you're going to get that depth of color that really no other kind of marker other than alcohol markers can achieve, in my opinion at least. You also don't need every marker in a color family, especially when you're starting out. So for the longest time with this combination, the next one I had down was the R20. So I could bridge the gap between the R20 and the R22 with blending rather than adding the R21 into my collection. Eventually I did pick up that marker color because I liked the shade and it is a bit different. But if you're just starting out and wanting to choose a few markers at a time, you can always skip and do every other shade like the R20, R22, and R24, and that will save you some money that way. Another thing to keep in mind when you are first choosing some Copics to start out with is what type of images you're going to be coloring. So if you're going to be coloring floral images, you're going to need something for the buds like the reds or the yellows that I just showed you. You're also going to need some greens for the leaves. This is one of the first combinations of greens that I had. If you are going to be coloring critters, you're going to probably want some browns, and there are lots and lots of different browns to choose from. This is, in my opinion, a kind of basic brown, the E53, E55, and E57. So you could do like bears or dogs or just all kinds of images, deer, anything you can think of, mice. If you wanted something with a little bit more of a reddish tone, you could do the E13, E15, and E17. And you can see the difference there between kind of more basic brown and then a bit more of a reddish brown. And I'll go into my favorite combinations for critters in a separate video. You might also want to start with some warm grays. There's W1, W3, and W5. These were the first 3 warm grays that I owned. These are great for like bunnies and raccoons and all different kinds of critters. There's also the cool grays if you prefer those. I started out with C1, C3, and C5, so this would be also good. I usually prefer to use the warm grays for animals and the cool grays for inanimate objects, but there are exceptions. I often like to do raccoons with the cool grays, or like a nice black bear with the cool grays. So it just depends on your personal preference. And there you can see kind of the difference between the warm tone and the cool tone. There are also toner grays and neutral grays. At this point, I don't own any of either. As just my personal preference, I haven't felt the need to add those to my collection, but certainly you could if you prefer those. If you wanted to go somewhere in the middle between the grays and the browns, there's the E70s like E71, E74, and E77. You can see in comparison to the regular kind of average browns and the warm grays, it's kind of like an in-between shade. So those I often love for like trees and stuff like that. I really love the E70s. No matter which sets of markers you decide to start out with, you are definitely going to need to pick up the 0 marker, which is called the Colorless Blender. It's a bit of a misnomer. It does not actually blend anything. It actually pushes away color. It's just the pure alcohol, so it's completely clear. All it does is move that color around on your surface. But that's something you definitely are going to want to have, especially at the beginning. You can correct a lot of mistakes with the Colorless Blender. You can also do a lot of cool techniques with that, and we can get into that in another video if you'd like, but this is a definite one that you're going to want to add no matter how many markers you decide to start out with at first. So the second tool that you're going to want to use with your Copic markers is your paper. And it may seem funny to classify the paper as a tool, but it really is crucial to getting the results that you want. Now, there are lots of brands on the market that are good for Copic markers. There are so many that you can use. The Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 80-pound or the 110-pound are both good. If you want to try them out, Lawn Fawn sells the 80-pound in packs of 10. You do not want to use something like Georgia Pacific from Walmart or any kind of cardstock that is not meant for alcohol ink. If the cardstock is too thin, your ink is going to saturate too quickly and it won't have any place to blend. So it needs to be a certain heavy weight, and it also can't be too heavyweight. You don't want to use a watercolor cardstock. Anything that is meant for absorbing water is also going to suck in your ink. And number one, you're going to go through your markers like crazy that way. Number two, you're going to have so much trouble keeping your color inside the lines. I also don't recommend the Bristol Smooth Surface, which I love for distress ink blending because it just glides across that coated surface. But that coated surface also doesn't allow the ink to saturate well enough for the Copic markers to be able to blend and meld together. It's also not a pure white, it's more of an off-white color, so I prefer the Neenah Solar White Classic Crest 80-pound, but even Copic makes their own called Copic Express It, and any brand will do. So the third and final absolute essential tool when Copic coloring, in my opinion, is the Copic marker hand color chart. This is a blank chart that you can find online and download and print out so that you can color in all the little rectangles as you build up your collection. You can see at a glance which markers you own, and you can also see your color families and which colors you might be missing and want to add to your collection next. You're also going to want to print this out on the same kind of paper that you're going to be using to color your images with so that you can see the colors as true as possible. This is a tool that I refer to so often. I use it for every single card that I color. It's always off to my side. I can pull off a piece of pattern paper and slide it across the chart and find the colors that match perfectly. And I can also just choose colors that I think will go well together based off this chart. I found this one on the Copic website years and years ago. This is the same chart I've used since I started almost 10 years ago coloring with Copic markers. I keep it in a sheet protector to keep it nice and clean. But if you just Google Copic marker hand coloring chart, you will find images of this that you can print out. Okay, so now we're going to go over a couple of optional tools. The number one would be the hex chart designed by Sandy Allnock. This is an ingenious system for seeing your Copic marker colors in a new way. This will help you come up with some new color combinations because you'll be able to see by where the colors are associated with each other on the chart what will work well together. Now, unlike the Copic hand coloring chart, which is completely free, this one has a small cost associated with it. As of right now, it costs $5.99 on Sandy's website, which is sandyallnock.com. In my opinion, it is well worth the investment. Once you have it, you can print it off as many times as necessary, and I just think it's a great tool to have. I do recommend that you print it out in black ink. I was out of black ink when I got this and I didn't want to wait, so I did it in a blue, and so my numbers aren't as clear as they could be, but it works for me. You may also notice that on some of the little hexes I have a little black line at the bottom. That is just a system that I devised to be able to keep track of the refills that I own. And I keep this hex chart on the back of my regular Copic marker hand color chart so that I can flip back and forth between the two as needed. So here are a couple tools that you don't necessarily need when you're first starting out with Copic markers, but if you decide to really get into them and you know that this is something that you're going to invest in and continue to use, you're going to need to be able to refill your markers. So Copic sells these refills, although the design is changing. These are actually discontinued now, and there is going to be a new style coming out this summer of 2020. The new style will be smaller and rounder and hold less ink, but I still have the old style right now. So you're going to need refills in the colors that you use the most. Another valuable tool to have is a jewelry scale. It's really helpful with measuring your Copic markers to know how much ink to fill inside them, and I will do a separate video on Copic refills. Another handy tool to have is the Copic tweezers. This is going to enable you to remove the chisel end of your Copic marker so that you can refill the bottle and not get your fingers all inky. And I do recommend that you get the one made by Copic because it is specially designed for removing those nibs without damaging them. And speaking of nibs, there are also replacements. So sometime down the line, your markers may get a little worn out at the nib, and they do sell the refills that you can just purchase and pop into place. They sell them in packages of 3. I just have the one left. And it is that super brush nib. I believe they also sell the chisel nibs, but I never need to replace those because I barely use them. But you just pull that out with the tweezers. It does damage the original nib, but you aren't going to use it again anyway because you're replacing it. And then you can just pop the new nib all the way down. And once that engages with the barrel inside, the ink will just flow through to the tip, and then you can replace the cap. And I can probably show you guys how to do that when I do the Copic refill video, once I find a marker that needs the tip replaced. The last thing I'm going to talk about today is storage, because I get asked all the time how I store my Copic markers. I personally use the Ultimate Pen Storage System by Crafter's Companion. This is a modular storage system, so you can add additional pieces to it, and you can also change the formation, so you could also build it up nice and tall if you prefer that rather than wide. And it stores all kinds of different pens, not just Copics. I also have my Zigs stored there. And I just love that it's right at arm's reach. I can see all my markers at a glance and grab them as needed. So this is what I personally use, but you can use any system that works for you. So there you have it. There are all my personal favorite tools of the trade as it pertains to coloring with Copic markers. So as I mentioned, this will be a series. I'm planning on doing separate videos for my favorite color combinations on critters, people, and nature, and then also maybe just a basic, like a Roy G. Biv favorites, and then also the refills. So if there are any other suggestions that you guys have for me to include in this series, please leave them in the comments down below. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already and hitting that notification bell. All of that interaction lets YouTube know that you enjoy content like this and you'd like to see more of it. It also helps get the word out about my channel because YouTube will show it to more people, and it just helps my channel grow. So I really appreciate all of your support, and thank you so much for doing that. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.